The first songs I wrote was a song called Into the Fire and another song called You're Missing. And I wrote those shortly after the 11th because we got asked to do a telethon here in the States. They were sort of the songs that were the beginning of a lot of the real writing that I did for the record, you know. It was just one of those moments when everything had changed and people were trying to get their grounding. No one really knew possibilities of what, no one really understood what had happened or what could happen. And so I think I was sitting down to just sort of, okay, well, what do I do now? You know, what do you say now? How has your dialogue with your audience changed? What do they need? What do you need to say? A lot of the other songs I wrote after that were kind of contextualized emotionally by that event. And if you read each song is independent in the sense that if you weren't aware of that event, they still work as pieces of music and they work lyrically, and they could just be about struggle, they could just be about so many different types of things. That's where the song gets its own independent inner integrity. And then you can read it through events or not, you know. So that was the trickiest part of the writing, you know. Nothing Man I wrote 8 or 9 years ago. We always planned to record it for this record, but if you sit it in, you know, you'd think it was written along with the new songs I'd written. Waiting on a Sunny Day I'd written already. You know, I wrote that during the last tour. The way that I was writing, that you could read the lyrics and say, well, this could be about this, or this could be about whatever you're going through personally at that moment. You know, that was intentional, and so those songs slipped pretty well into the body of work that I created after the 11th. Anytime you're dealing with real events that have affected real people's lives, where people have experienced tragic losses and life-changing experiences, those are places you have to think very deeply about before you go. Otherwise, you're going to do a disservice to those people's experiences. You're going to end up exploiting the event in some fashion that you don't want to do. And so the key ingredient is a lot of thoughtfulness about what you're saying and how you're presenting it. And hopefully that pays off in the end with something that feels real, has a real humanity in it, and is worth something to the people who've passed through that experience, you know. I always thought I was writing American music in the sense that that was where I came from. But on the other hand, my biggest audience, certainly for the past 10 years, has been in continental Europe, you know, where we've had deep, deep support from our fans over there. So obviously I'm writing about something that's you know, that's connecting beyond, you know, just the shores of the USA. Hopefully my fans would expect the inclusiveness, you know, and not an exclusive point of view or a point of view coming from just, you know, being a citizen of the States. And on this particular record, I thought about that twice as much, and that particularly towards the end where I wrote a couple songs, Worlds Apart, a song called Paradise, where it really needed to get outside the U.S. And so that was an important part of the record because I didn't want it to be misjudged in that sense. The guy, well, when I wrote that particular song, I already had some Eastern tones and scales in it, you know, because that's where the lyric was going. And I left a space for a certain range of singing. I knew what it was, but I didn't know how to get it. So we started to look around, and by happenstance, Asif Ali Khan and his group was in Los Angeles, which was a real stroke of luck because it was right towards the end of the record. And they came in the studio one day and they just sang really beautifully on the song Worlds Apart, and added tremendously to the breadth of the record, and it was very exciting, you know, very exciting. wasn't sure what I was saying when I wrote the song. I mean, that was instinctive. I was basically writing about the ideas of paradise. Sort of the different. I think at the time, when you were reading a lot of the newspapers, I think I wrote it after the first teenage girl suicide bombers, and so the way that paradise was used as a motivational tool, it made me very angry. So I started off with that vignette, and somebody, they're standing there and they're waiting for paradise. The second verse, there was sort of I met a woman whose husband was killed in the Pentagon, and there was that interpretation of paradise, of hoping to meet someone who you've lost in the afterlife, in another place. That idea of paradise, and of losing yourself to that idea of paradise. The end of the song, really, where the survivors of either experience they go to this river, which is really sort of this river of transition between life and death, and they go under the water and they swim and they see the people, that person they've lost, and the line is their eyes are as empty as paradise. And really I was just trying to say that hey, all we have is this life, and we have this world, and it's all we can count on. And at the end, the person swims to the surface, and that's the last sort of scene in the song, and that's all we know, and that's all, that's all we've got to go by. So that was really just an intuitive song that fell together in a certain way, and from what was going on the week that I'd written it.